very interesting to hear that, hey, there's a non-toxic, fairly natural way of treating cancer.
I think it's very helpful for me, also in my field. And I like to learn more, new things every day. And this is something new, and I really like to learn more about it.
You know what was really interesting for me is learning there are valid, proven alternatives to chemo and additions to chemotherapy and things that really seem to work.
She really gets to the point. She showed a lot of scientific data, which is, I find it very useful. That's very, very nice for people to learn.
The biggest surprise for me was knowing that a person could resolve the cancer and get on with their life.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming here tonight and joining the Beljanski Foundation. But before I start, I have a question for you. How many of you have ever had a diagnosis of cancer or know somebody who has received a diagnosis of cancer? Wow. Almost everybody. And everywhere I go, it's about the same thing. And why is it like that? Haven't we spent a lot of money on the war on cancer? What happened since 1971, when President Nixon declared the war on cancer? Where did all that money go? All those research efforts, what happened with that? How come almost everybody, wherever I go, has received a diagnosis of cancer? And the worst is yet to come, because according to cancer research, actually the number of cancer is going to double by 2030. And the number of deaths by cancer is going to increase by 60%. The worst may be that it's not just, elderly people who are going to receive this kind of diagnosis. It's almost all different kinds of ages see an increase of all kinds of cancer. So why is it like that? Well, the reasons are numerous. First, of course, there is a demographic change. Population is getting older, are more prone to disease. Then there is our unhealthy lifestyle, related to economic development. We live on a planet which has now become a big garbage. We are smoking, we are eating poorly, physical inactivity. As the number of toxins increase, the number of cancer increase, unfortunately, and the treatments basically have not changed for the past 50 years. So if we keep doing the same thing, it's hoping for a different outcome. It's a definition of insanity. What is also a big reason why treatments are not changing is, surprise, money. And it is directly linked to patent law. According to the US Patent and Trademark Office, natural products cannot be patented. Therefore, there is no incentive for pharmaceutical companies to look into natural products. They keep looking always at synthetic products that are good for making money, but maybe it's not what we need to help us. So it is about time to look at cancer and wonder, why are we losing the war on cancer and how could we win it? They said that we could win the war on cancer if we were looking at molecules we would be more natural, more selective, and less toxic. And very interestingly, that's exactly what my late father, Dr. Mirko Beljanski, was looking at already back in the 80s when he was researching at the Pasteur Institute in Paris. The focus of his research was really to look at the environment and how the environment is affecting our DNA and changing our DNA to the point where there is a change at the level of the cells. He is called now the father of environmental medicine because he really brought at the level of the DNA the scientific explanation on how environmental toxins are modifying, affecting our DNA. So here what it looks like, the Beljanski's theories of cancer. Here you have a LC-DNA, and you see the two strands of the DNA, which are nicely interwoven and linked together by those hydrogen bonds. The traditional view of cancer is that cancer results from a mutation of one of the nucleotides. Nucleotides here on this picture are those little gray grounds that constitute the strands of the DNA. Mirko Beljanski had the idea to look at the big picture, the way the two strands are actually interwoven. And he made the observation that whatever the species, and we speak here at plants, animals, humans, every time a cell turns cancerous, there is a difference at the level of the DNA. The two strands of the DNA in a cancerous cell are always enlarged to the point where the hydrogen bonds are so stretched that at some point they break. And when they break, the damage cannot be repaired. So his idea is that cancer DNA differs from normal DNA in its secondary structure, which is the way the two strands are interwoven, rather than only its primary structure. So let's look at what cancer does, a carcinogen does to the DNA. Line A, you have a nice healthy DNA, and the two strands are kept together by the hydrogen bonds. You put it in contact with a carcinogen, you start to see what my father called a beginning of destabilization, some irregular loops. At this point, if you stop the contact with a carcinogen, the DNA is able to heal itself to go back to line A. But in real life, we are bombarded with toxins of all kinds all day long. So actually, the work of destabilization continues to the point where the big loops are created, and then the hormones of replications are available to the replication sites, and it starts replicating. And that's why cancer cells do replicate much faster than healthy cells. So he had the idea of creating a test to see how molecules in the environment are doing with, how are they affecting the rate of duplication of the DNA. So he created this OncoTest, and he divided the molecules in 4 categories. A are the carcinogens. This is a well-known carcinogen. We know that in laboratories this creates cancer. So we see here what is going to be our carcinogen of reference. It increases the rate of synthesis of cancer DNA with little effect on normal healthy DNA, here shown in green. So a bigger effect on cancer DNA, which is already destabilized, rather than on healthy DNA, which is kept together by the hydrogen bonds. You see here vinblastine, which is chemotherapy, at some dosage is acting like a carcinogen. Actually, this is very low dosage of chemotherapy. And you see this really acting like the MBA here. So steep increase of the rate of synthesis of the DNA with a little modest effect on healthy DNA. Steroid hormone, testosterone, may act at some non-physiologic dosage like a carcinogen. That's why there are some treatments for prostate cancer which are all about suppressing testosterone. Then you have the category B, which have the neutrals. No effect either on cancer DNA or healthy DNA. And then category C, you have the toxics. Those are able to prevent the synthesis of cancer DNA, which is great, but also of healthy DNA. So there is no more possible life. Those are defoliants. Those products were used for Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. So here is D, the perfect anti-cancer substance. This is one that would be able to impair the synthesis selectively of cancer DNA, but would leave untouched the synthesis of healthy DNA. And the question was, is there such a perfect anti-cancer substance? My father said, if nature came up with carcinogens, nature also came up with anti-carcinogens. And he was very lucky with his oncotest to find 2 molecules able to do just that. The first one, flavoperirine, comes from a tree called Paupera, which grows in South America. The second molecule, alstonine, comes from a tree that grows in Africa and called Revolfia vomitoria. Interestingly, you see that the 2 molecules, flavoperirine and alstonine, are quite similar. Alstonine is a little bit bigger, but that both molecules have a zwitterion, a negatively and a positively charged nitrogen, and that was, my father thought, the secret of their selective activity. If those molecules work indeed at the level of the DNA, then my father thought they should not be gender or organ specific. They should work at the level of the DNA, and we have one DNA from head to toe. So, at the Pasteur Institute, where he was a PhD, he tested those 2 extracts on different kinds of cancer cells. Here you have the human liver, and you can see that both the Paupera in blue and the Revolfia in green are doing both a very good job at inhibiting the growth of cancer cells. Here the Pau on liver, Paupera is doing a little bit better than Revolfia, but both are providing a very nice decrease, inhibition of the growth of cells. Here you have thyroid, and you see again that both extracts are doing a very good job at inhibiting the synthesis, the growth of both cell lines. And here we have human breast cell lines, and again, a very nice inhibition thanks to both plant extracts. Then he went on to see if those compounds would be selective to cancer cells. And Paupera extracts and Revolfia extracts happen to be both fluorescent. So on the UV light, you are able to see exactly where the extract goes by just following the light. And you can see here we have a healthy astrocyte, healthy cell of the brain, and you can see that the light is remaining just outside of the membrane of the healthy cell. It's not able to penetrate the healthy membrane. On the other hand, here you have glioblastoma cells, and you can see that the Paupera extract has been able to penetrate the nucleus and nucleoli of those cells. It's even more visible on the UV light. you see that really, by looking at the light is not wandering anywhere else. It's really focusing on those cancerous cells. So what does it mean if it is selective? It means no toxicity. If you do not have a cancerous cell, it's going to stay outside. It's not going to penetrate the cell. It's not going to damage the cell, and you are going to eliminate naturally the product within a matter of hours. No toxicity, no side effect, and working on a very large number of cancerous cells. So Mirko Beljanski published everything, got a lot of interest of a lot of people. And in France, there was kind of movement, a non-for-profit that started called CIRIS. And what they started to do every year, they started to gather and exchange testimonials, their stories of survivors, and so on. This got the attention, actually, a few years ago of Los Angeles magazine, and we got the cover of this Los Angeles magazine. It said, "We survived cancer thanks to Mirko Beljanski, and you can too." They have been now meeting for 23 years, every year, and there are several hundred people every year. So the most prestigious patient that my father had to deal with was the former French president, François Mitterrand. François Mitterrand was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer at the beginning of his first term. Terms were 7 years at the time in France, but he was able to keep that secret until the middle of his second term. Now we are 10 years after the initial diagnosis. The president is very, very sick. So they got the surgeon to the French White House, the Élysée, and the surgeon did his surgery and said, the cancer has spread everywhere. The president is not going to finish his term. We have to prepare the country for early elections. But it's a French story. So the president had a mistress. And the mistress knew about a doctor who was using, with success, the products with all those people you have seen. So Mitterrand started to take the Beljanski products, and here, wow, the press reacted, you see. Mitterrand, c'est un miracle. It's a miracle. Here, 1 year later, he went from this to that. So that made my father pretty famous, well-known, put him really on the map. My father was a researcher. He was a PhD. He was not a political animal. He was absolutely not ready to what it takes to, you know, to be in the limelight. So after Mitterrand finally passed away in 1995, there was a backlash. The French army went to ransack the laboratory, to destroy everything. They wanted all this research to disappear. Some people, powerful people, had been really, really annoyed with having lost faith, betting the president would not finish his term. And they were proven wrong by what? Some natural plant extracts? Come on, cannot be serious. That had to disappear. So we believe that my father was radiated. Like 2 months after the laboratory was ransacked, my father was diagnosed with advanced myeloid leukemia, which is supposed to take 10 years to evolve. And he was on his deathbed, and he asked me, because I don't have a scientific background, I'm a lawyer by trade, he asked me to take the case to the European Court of Human Rights, because you cannot just destroy the defendant, when you have nothing in a case. That's not the way to go. That's not the way to win a legal case. So we went to the European Court of Human Rights. In the meantime, hundreds of people took the streets of Paris and other French cities asking for the Beljanski products. Here you see available, efficient and non-toxic. I don't know if you have ever seen people marching for dietary supplements. I mean, people always march against something, but not for. And for dietary supplements, this is something absolutely we never had, seen anywhere before. The French government had, suppressed everything, seized every document. They were not going to yield. They were not going to let my father off the hook. And finally, it took 2 years, but we arrived at before the European Court of Human Rights, and we won an unanimous decision, Beljanski against France. Unfortunately, too late for my father to see, because he passed away in 1998, just 20 years ago. I made another promise also to my father. I promised him to carry on with the science. Because as a scientist, even more dear than his own life was his research. I mean, that was the meaning of his life, his discoveries. Really that was more important to him than his own life. So I promised that, that could not disappear. It belonged to mankind. I grew up seeing, people coming to my parents' home and crying because they had been diagnosed, and then doing better and bringing flowers to my mother and so on. I said, I knew, even though I was not a scientist, even when I was, growing as a little brat, I was saying, I will never get involved into that. I don't want to hear about, sick people all the time. But when that was almost destroyed, I said, no, I have to carry on. So I started the Beljanski Foundation in New York. It's a non-for-profit. And what it does is researching natural compounds that help fight cancer. And we are doing it now in collaboration with a number of scientific universities, American scientific universities, because there is no more laboratory. The laboratory was disappeared with my father. So I was very lucky to meet with Dr. Aaron Katz, who was the head of holistic urology at Columbia University. And when he heard about the Mitterrand story, of course, as a urologist, he was very, very interested and very impressed. And he told me, okay, would love to try to research those products, but dietary supplements, we cannot do a clinical trial. We cannot have a clinical trial on sick people. We can only have a clinical trial on people who are not sick. So that's how we started with the idea of a small clinical trial on precancerous condition, precancerous cells. And we started with a trial escalation dose on men with elevated PSA, but no prostate cancer, a negative biopsy. So the men who enrolled, at all of them elevated PSA, and we had to go through a first biopsy, and they were supposed to have a second biopsy at the end. So we gave the first cohort of 3 men 2 capsules, and then the next one 3 capsules, and then the next one 4 capsules, and so on. The idea for Dr. Katz was to see how well the product would be tolerated, and also what would be the effect on the PSA. And you see that everybody, whatever the dosage, had some decrease of their PSA. They were followed for 12 months. So the first cohort, nobody turned blue, green, or whatever, so we went to a second cohort of 4 capsules, and then a third cohort of 4 capsules, and so on. Everybody did well. The problem that we had was that the men were doing so well at the end of those 12 months that they did not want to have a second biopsy. So we were not able to have the end point of the study and publish those results. But Dr. Katz was very happy, nevertheless, with the results, and he went on giving interviews saying, we now know that the combination of PAO and Revolfia extracts can significantly lower PSAs in a 12-month period, and we have found a number of patients who have had a dramatic improvement in their urinary symptoms. Men are clearly having less frequency, better streams, and better flow rates. They are not getting up at night as often. We went on to compare what would be the effect of PAO Pereira with traditional drugs to lower the PSA. And here you have VAH, which is a control. We are now looking at animals, at mice. This is prostates of mice. Interesting. I'm sure nobody has seen prostate of mice before. So, something new tonight. So here is a control group. This is a normal size of mice prostate. When they have BPH, they have enlarged prostate. And here, what the enlarged prostate of mice looks like. When you give them the drug finasteride, you see the decrease of the size of those prostate. When you give PAO Pereira extract, here what you get. And Revolfia extract, here what you get. So when you transfer that into statistics, here what it looks like. Normal prostate, BPH, the drug finasteride, and here PAO Pereira extract. And you can see PAO Pereira alone is not as effective as a drug, and same thing, Revolfia is not as effective by the drug, but it is nevertheless doing a very good job at reducing the inflammation compared to the BPH model and shrinking the prostate. The most interesting is that it is doing that without all the side effects associated to the drug. And those side effects, are impotence, loss of interest in sex, trouble having an orgasm, abnormal ejaculation, swelling in your hands or feet, swelling or tenderness in your breast, dizziness, weakness, feeling like you might pass out, headache, runny nose, skin rash. According to internet, there are the side effects of finasteride. We can do better with precancerous cells. Now, can we do better with cancerous cells? Because that's mostly the goal. So we went on to study prostate, ovarian, and pancreatic cancer cells. Dr. Katz was very interested in studying in vitro and in vivo with mice those extracts with prostate cancer, because prostate cancer is 1 out of 7 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer nowadays in the US. It is one of the most kind of cancer for men, actually. So here you have mice this time, which have received the prostate cancer. And you see the control group here. The size of the tumor they develop is over 200 millimeter cube. And here, when you give them PAO Pereira, you can see that the size of the tumor is much, much smaller than without the PAO Pereira. And when it is dose dependent, so the more you give, and the better you are doing. Revolfia vomitoria is same thing. Here is a control. And as soon as you give a Revolfia extract, the size of the tumor is much, much smaller. without again, side effects. Now, we went on to see if there was a synergy of action with chemotherapy. This is very important. You know, you don't want to interfere with the treatment. You don't want to, I mean, the patient is going to have to go to the hospital, is going to have chemotherapy. So is it possible to associate those extracts with chemotherapy? And you see here, docetaxel, now we are looking at the inhibition. So the higher the better, the higher the more inhibition of cancer cells. So here you have a low dosage of docetaxel itself alone. Here a bigger dosage of docetaxel. Here you have the Revolfia alone, and you see that the best results are with a mix of Revolfia and docetaxel. All those results are published and are available on the table. We proudly get everything published. Here are the two publications on prostate, with Revolfia vomitoria and with Pao Pereira. So both extracts are able to reduce the growth of prostate cancer cell lines. They are doing that with different mechanisms of action. Pao induces apoptosis, while the other one suppresses the cell division of the tumor cells. And both were very well, very efficient without doing any side effects. So Dr. Katz was speaking about that in his lectures. He was very pleased with the results of those presentations. And I was sitting in the audience when a lady next to me says, hey, I am Dr. Driscoll from Kansas University Medical Center. This sounds terrific. Do you have something like that for women? And I said, yes, the same thing, because it's not gender or organ specific. So she said, could we try on ovarian cancer? And I said, of course we could try on ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer has not the rate of mortality rate of ovarian cancer has not improved for the past 40 years. It's one of the deadliest of all gynecologic cancers. So she was very eager to see if there would be something that would work for ovarian cancer. So we went again in vitro and then in vivo. I skipped the in vitro. We go directly to in vivo and to the tumor of mice which have been grafted with ovarian cancer. And you see here the control group. So those mice have developed those big tumors. When you give carboplatin, which is the chemotherapy which is given in the hospital for ovarian cancer, you see that the carboplatin is reducing the size of the tumor. So does Pao Pereira alone. But when you mix carboplatin and 20 milligrams of Pao Pereira, you have almost nothing left. This is Pao Pereira alone. And when you mix carboplatin and 50 milligrams of Pao Pereira, there is absolutely almost nothing left. And same thing with the Revolfia. You see that it is a combination of Revolfia and carboplatin that gives the best results. Here we are speaking of tumor wealth. When you are speaking of acids, which are those cells which are developed, in the abdomen when there is ovarian cancer and are very, very bad prognosis, well, you can see that it is again the combination of carboplatin and Pao Pereira here and here, which gives the best results. Here, everything has disappeared. Everything has disappeared. And the cells, cancer cells inside the acids, with the combination, again, everything has disappeared. And when we look at Pao Pereira, it's also the combination of Revolfia and carboplatin which provides the best results. So that led to publications, again, two publications, one on Pao Pereira and ovarian cancer, saying Pao-Pereira alone suppresses the tumor growth by 79% and decreases the volume of acids by 5%. When Pao-Pereira was combined with carboplatin, tumor inhibition reached 97%, and acids was completely eradicated. This is great. This is great. When you think it's done without added toxicity. And here is Revolfia. When combining Revolfia and carboplatin, remarkably enhanced the effect of carboplatin and reduced tumor burden by 87 to 90% and acid volume from 89% to 97%. Both are working alone and in synergy with, we have seen, docetaxel and carboplatin. So Dr. Driscoll was very excited with those results, and she said, can we also try on pancreatic cancer? Because pancreatic cancer is really the big monster. It is more and more pancreatic cancer now are being diagnosed. I'm pretty sure that it has to do with the kind of food that we are eating and most specifically the Roundup, the glyphosate that has been given to us generously over the past several years. There is very bad, very poor outcome generally under 5 years. So she was really, really eager to see in vitro and in vivo if we could do something for this pancreatic cancer. So again, a very similar kind of study, control group, mice grafted with pancreatic cancer cells. Here they receive gemcitabine, which is a different kind of chemotherapy. So you see some reduction here of the tumor, 20 milligrams of Pao-Pereira, gemcitabine and Pao-Pereira doing the best results, Pao-Pereira 50 milligrams and gemcitabine plus 50 milligrams. Again, the best results are obtained with the synergy of chemotherapy and Pao-Pereira, and same thing with the Revolfia. So both are doing, okay. The Pao-Pereira is doing better than Revolfia on pancreatic cancer, but because they have a different mechanism of action, it's always good to add them together. That led to 2 other publications, confirming again the low toxicity, no toxic effects of Pao-Pereira, and then the Pao-Pereira had a strong inhibition of those pancreatic tumors, reaching 70% of inhibition, even when tumors did not respond to gemcitabine anymore. So, you know what, because one of the big problems with chemotherapies is that they work for a while, and at some point, the cells become resistant. So the doctor tells you, well, you are failing the treatment. No, you are not failing the treatment. It is a chemotherapy that is not working anymore on those cancerous cells. So it is really, really important to know that even when the chemotherapy is not working anymore and the hospital has nothing to offer, then those little plant extracts are still working, so they can be used in synergy with chemotherapies or alone. And theoretically, PAO could allow lower concentration of chemotherapy with achieving an equivalent cytotoxicity in cancer cells. And again, also another publication with Revolfia on pancreatic cancer. So again, Revolfia and gemcitabine had a synergistic effect to inhibit the cell growth, and metastasis was completely inhibited with the Revolfia. No metastasis. That was the great surprise and gift of this study. So completely eradication of the metastasis. So we have seen precancerous cells. We have seen a number of cancerous cells. What about those advanced advanced cancer cells which do not respond to chemotherapy? So we had this inch already with the studies that on gemcitabine that it was working even when the cells had become resistant to gemcitabine. But we went to look on advanced prostate cancer which do not respond to anything, completely metastasis. Those were given, hormonal treatment after chemotherapy has already stopped working. This is the hormonal treatment is chemical castration. Actually, it is suppressing completely the testosterone. And we have seen on the picture on the oncotest, the slide of the oncotest, that testosterone at some dosage can fuel the cancer. So that's what the idea is, to suppress the testosterone. But testosterone is not the source, the cause of the cancer. So you can suppress the fuel, but you are not going to suppress the cancer. At some point, I mean, the hormone suppressing the testosterone is going to stop working, and then there is nothing that is being offered today for those men with very advanced prostate cancer. So it was a very interesting challenge because there is nothing on the market available for this population. So Paupera extract is effective against prostate cancer cells that no longer respond to agents that interfere with hormonal action. We tested, again on cells, and you see here those very advanced metastatic cells, and you give them 120 milligram of Paupera, 200 microgram per milliliter of Paupera, 500, everything has disappeared. And we know why. The Paupera acts on a signaling complex called NF-kappa B, and it's a control center regulating cell survival, proliferation, and invasion. So we have the results and the mechanism of action. And there is nothing else like that. So you are going to tell me, okay, this is lovely on mice, on cells, what about humans? And I told you we cannot have clinical trial on people with a disease with a natural product. So the closest that we can have comes from a collaboration that we have initiated with a doctor in Japan who is using a test called RGCC. RGCC is a laboratory in Greece, actually, which has patented a method to test cancer cells and a panel of natural or synthetic agents to see how they are going to affect those cancer cells. So when you send your blood to the laboratory is going to test your specific cancer cells against this panel of agents and tell you exactly what is going to work at destroying those cancer cells. And this doctor was kind enough to share with us that he has tested a number of patients suffering from ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer, lung cancer, uterus, breast, parotid gland, colon, small intestine, and every time he was told that the mix of Paupera and Revolfia vomitoria was inducing apoptosis of the cancer cells of his patients. So again, it's working alone, and it's working on a large number of kind of cancer cells. Now, what about cancer stem cells? Cancer stem cells, as long as you have not solved the problem of cancer stem cells, you have not solved the problem of cancer, because cancer stem cells are those cells which are resistant to chemotherapy and are the cause of metastasis. And as of today, there is nothing available to destroy cancer stem cells. Here what happens. You have a tumor, and in a tumor, all cancer cells are not created equal. You have, let's say, regular cancer cells, and a few inside which has cancer stem cells. When you give chemotherapy, you destroy the regular cancer cells. But what you are doing is really destroying the competition of the most aggressive one. You are leaving all the room for the cancer stem cells. So you are told the tumor is shrinking, but actually the cancer stem cells are still there, and they are able to survive chemotherapy, to travel, and to multiply, and to create new stem cells and regular cancer cells. And after a while, you have a tumor relapse. So it was really, really important to see if those little extracts were able to destroy cancer stem cells. And we have seen, this study with, I told you, with pancreas saying no metastasis with the Revolfia. Are we on something here? Well, here is ovarian cancer cells. And you can see here we have measured the number of spheroids in order to measure the amount of cancer stem cells selectively. We give 50 micrograms per liter, and here we have a nice reduction. And 100 micrograms per liter, all the cancer stem cells have disappeared. And here with Revolfia, same thing. Between 50 and 100 micrograms per milliliter, all the cancer stem cells has disappeared. Remember, the product is not toxic. So we said, are we very lucky here? Or we wanted to try on pancreatic cancer cells. It's about confirmation. And we see, again, the miracle happens between 50 and 100 micrograms per milliliter. And here between 100 and 200 micrograms per milliliter, which led to this publication, in vitro and in vivo, Pao Pereira at 20 micrograms per milliliter, 5 times a day by gavage, meaning eaten. You don't have to have a blood perfusion. You don't need to go to the hospital. Significantly reduced those cancer stem cells in immunocompromised mice, indicating inhibition of cancer stem cells in vivo. And we just received, had already left New York, we just received the paper on with Revolfia. It's also working the same way. So the Pao Pereira paper is also available on the table. Everything gets published. If you do not take the papers tonight, if you want to share with your doctor and so on, you can always go to the website of the Beljanski Foundation, beljanski.org. All those publications are available, and you can download them and print them. So we went, now I have presented to you the Pao Pereira and the Revolfia extracts on precancerous cells, advanced cancer cells, and even cancer stem cells. Now, I would like to speak to you about something completely different than those plant extracts. But it is also something completely unique, and that's why I want to share that with you. RNA fragments that my father perfected. This is about platelets. Platelets are those cells inside the blood that help create a clot. And those cells, we are supposed to have a normal level between 150,000 to 400,000. But when we receive chemotherapy, those cells are destroyed by chemotherapy, and then there is an increase of bleeding. And when there is bleeding, it's called, to a high level, it's called thrombocytopenia, when there is not enough platelets left. So here what looks like when you have a patient to whom you give chemotherapy. At the beginning, the bone marrow, which is created the white blood cells and platelets, is able to create a decent number of platelets. But as you give more and more chemotherapies, every time you have a severe drop of the cells, and little by little, the bone marrow gets exhausted and is no longer able to produce a decent number of platelets. So at this, you get there, where, there is not enough platelets, the patient is bleeding, it's very dangerous, and the prognosis is very bad. And as of today, there is nothing on the market for platelets. There are products for white blood cells, growth factors which are given for white blood cells, but not for platelets. So Mirko Beljanski thought, how are platelets created in the first place? Well, they are created by the bone marrow, and they are created by the DNA of the bone marrow. So he said, well, why don't I support the DNA of the bone marrow in his job of synthesis by providing this bone marrow by a little primer, and a little RNA which is going to come and prime the lagging chain of the DNA. So that's what he did. And here you have in vitro the normal rate of synthesis of DNA. And when you add this little RNA fragment, you see the dramatic improvement on the rate of synthesis of the DNA of the bone marrow. So it's little fragments of E. coli K12. E. coli K12, don't freak out when I say E. coli. E. coli K12 is known to be non-mutagenic, non-pathogenic, and we remove all the membrane, we completely remove all the proteins. There is just left the RNA, which is completely purified and chopped into little pieces. So no reason to be afraid with the word RNA from E. coli K12. Beljanski gave that to rabbits when he was at the Pasteur Institute. Those rabbits received a very hefty dose of nasty chemotherapy called cyclophosphamide. And you see the control group of rabbits, all of them die within 10 days. But the rabbits who receive the RNA fragments, every time their white blood cells and platelets are going up and up and up and up again after each chemotherapy. And at the end of 60 days, all the rabbits were alive. So we had, with Cancer Treatment Centers of America, a clinical trial on people who were at the verge of thrombocytopenia. So technically, they were not sick. They were at the verge of thrombocytopenia. How did they get there? Well, they had cancer, and they had received already a number of chemotherapy sessions, which are dropped their number of platelets to the verge of thrombocytopenia. So we have here patients who have different kinds of cancer: pancreas, head, neck, breast, colon, esophageal, lung. They have all received nasty chemotherapies before. They are heavily pretreated. Many had metastatic disease even to the bone marrow. And we do, again, dose escalation design. So we give them The first group 20 milligrams. If they are doing well, we go to 40 milligrams, then 60 milligrams, and we decided we would go up to 80 milligrams to see what everything was well tolerated. In each cohort, it would be 10 patients, okay? So a total of 31 patients. And they were all at the verge of thrombocytopenia. So here you have a patient who is start to receive the RNA fragments, and you see that its number of platelets is going up and up and up and up again after each chemotherapy. There is no this typical slide down that we have seen, for what is typical of a patient undergoing chemotherapy. And we gave them here 40 milligrams, and he was not sick, so we give him 60 milligrams, and then we went up to 80 milligrams, no side effect. Platelets level recovered quickly following the nadir, which is the lowest point. No unplanned dose reduction, no platelet transfusion. Patient completed the treatment plan. Here we see another patient, and you see that every time, again, a very nice ability of the bone marrow to create a decent number of platelets. And here we stopped the RNA fragments. And you can see that the bone marrow is able, even if we had stopped, to produce a decent number of platelets. Like the bone marrow has been protected during all those cycles of chemotherapies. So patient totally protected from thrombocytopenia, most nadirs above threshold for thrombocytopenia, so he never went, even at the lowest part, he never went to the level of thrombocytopenia. Recovery levels were well within normal levels, so the upper thing when we do not give chemotherapy he was well into the normal limit, like somebody who is not going under chemotherapy. So the 31 patients, no adverse events, no patient underwent a reduction of their dose of chemotherapy while on RNA fragments. RNA fragments appear to accelerate the recovery in platelet counts. RNA fragments appear to stabilize or elevate the platelet number at the nadir. And here is a publication regarding this clinical trial, again done at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Now, I told you also about a tea. The tea is something completely new to me. Not something that I had, was part until recently from what I thought about my father's work. And I received this piece of paper from somebody who had, recovered it from the time where my father's laboratory was ransacked. It was whatever was left. The scattered papers that were left on the floor were put at the time in a box. It remained in a garage for 20 years, and last year they decided to get rid of the garage, and they sent me the box in New York. And I find this. And what I immediately recognized my father's handwriting, and it is 4 kinds of teas, green teas from China, and it says, très, très, very, very anti-C. And I knew that my father had traveled in China. He had worked with Chinese scientist, Professor Liu. They had together a publication. And what happened is that when he left China, the Professor Liu gave him a big sample of teas, as a thank you gift to say goodbye. And my father, as soon as he arrived in Paris, he tested that with his oncotest. green tea was already quite well known to have antioxidant properties. But anti-cancer properties, I think he was one of the first one to test green tea for anti-cancer properties. And that is telling us, because there were more than teas than that in the box, that all green teas are not the same. Those are the ones which are very, very anti-C. So I decided to source those teas, organic, and I decided to send that to Kansas University, with whom we have already done the work on ovarian and pancreatic cancer, but I wanted to see how it was doing compared to the other green teas on the market. So we sent Bigelow, Kusmi, Lipton, and this mix of teas that I called oncotea because of the oncotest. And we'd ask them to test on breast cancer. And you can see how this is the control. And you can see here that Bigelow is inhibiting a little bit. Kusmi is doing better. Lipton is almost not inhibiting the cancer cells. And oncotea is doing a good job at inhibiting here those cancer cells. And even on metastatic breast cancer cells, oncotea is doing a pretty good job at inhibiting those metastatic cancer cells. So I thought that was really interesting, and it is my pleasure to give you the opportunity tonight to taste the teas. They come in different, the tea did not taste good, I have to say. The tea was pretty disgusting, the mix. So we decided to enhance the taste. And so in one we added some ginger lemons, in one we added some tulsi, in one we added some mango peach. So we ended up with 3 flavors, but at the base it is the mix of teas. And this has not been published yet. We want to do more research, especially in vivo, before getting published. But we had a press release, which is also available, explaining that, what just I told you, that we compared this mix of teas with some different kind of teas available on the market and compare the data on breast cancer. All this story about my father, the research, the study, how I got there, all this is available in the book that just was published, and tells you even more about than I was able to tell you tonight. I think it is an easy read, and if you are interested in learning more about this research and those compounds, I think it's an easy approach. And if you want to learn more, also there is a website of the foundation at beljanski.org. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joséphine is going to tell you a little more about the products themselves, if you want to learn more about the products themselves and how to use them.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joséphine Scandell. You can call me by my first name, Joséphine. I'm the holistic health coach at Natural Source. Sylvie told you a lot about the scientific research that we are doing with the Beljanski Foundation tonight. But all the extracts of plants she talked about actually are manufactured at Natural Source International. We are based in New York City. And at Natural Source International, we manufacture all the plants that Sylvie talked about tonight. So I just said that. So we understood that the destabilization of the DNA doesn't happen overnight. It is, in a progressive and cumulative way that, you know, the destabilization of the DNA is going to happen. And this has been explained very well by Dr. Mirko Beljanski. So what can we do? Sylvie talked about an extract of plants, actually two, but we're going to look first at this one, Pao Pereira. It's on the table over there, so you can see that later. Pao Pereira, she told us about the very selective action of the, I'm going to try to use that. To point, I'm not sure. Yes. So Sylvie talked about the flavopererin, which is the alkaloid extracted from the Pao Pereira. And she told us about, you know, the mechanism of action, which is very, very selective. The flavopererin is going to induce apoptosis in destabilized cells, so cancerous cells. That's one fact. And Mirko Beljanski, you know, published that, and we saw that different medical centers have studied this mechanism of action very well. Sylvie didn't tell us about the antiviral property of this extract. So it works very well for any types of viruses to lower the viral load. Some virus we can eradicate, but some others we can control the viral load. And this has been studied on HIV, and we have a publication on that. The third effect that Sylvie didn't mention is the anti-inflammatory effect, very also powerful. It's very good to regulate some of the markers of the inflammation, as we see here. And this has been published also, you know, in many scientific studies. And as we understood, it's very selective. So it is going to target specific destabilized cells. And I don't know if you remember the picture with the brain cells. I don't know if I have it here. No, I'm not sure. Yeah. So no, I don't have it here, but remember astrocytes, very normal cell of the brain. The Pao is not doing anything, but in presence of cancerous cells, glioblastoma, the Pao is going to target this type of cells. So it's very selective, and it shows us also that it can go the brain barrier. So that's very interesting, because not a lot of alkaloids can do that. Very few. And this one can do it. The alkaloid flavopererin is very, very small, so it can go through the brain barrier. So you'll see on the table there's another extract of Pao Pereira, which is Pao VFM. And previously, we saw the Pao V. Now it's the Pao VFM, and FM stands for François Mitterrand, because you've heard about the story and François Mitterrand. So just for you to know that those are the two same products, but the FM is a little bit stronger. It has more alkaloid in it. And also it has another plant called Cassia amara, which is going to facilitate the digestion. But basically, they are the same. Sylvie told us about Rauwolfia vomitoria. Here, I'm just, tell you about the products, because we heard about the science, but the products available here and manufactured by Natural Source International, those are the products. So this one is the extract of Rauwolfia vomitoria, and it's called Rovolve. And the alkaloid we heard is called alstonin. This one also is very, very selective. That's the specificity of the Beljanski products. They are very selective, as now we know. And this one, first, it's very good at regulating the hormonal system. So every time we have a hormonal system challenged, the Rauwolfia is going to regulate. So it has been studied, for example, for infertility, or also for symptoms of menopause. We don't have any studies on symptoms of menopause, but we have the experience now that, a lot of women or even men who are experiencing some hormonal challenge have very good benefits from this Rovol-V. So that's the Rovol. Sorry. And we, for the purpose of the study at Columbia University Hospital by Dr. Katz, if you remember, they worked on prostate cancer. We combined those two extracts in one product called Prostabel. So Prostabel is just a combination of Rauwolfia and Pauperera. And it's also on the table. So it's very, it's easiest to take. Instead of taking two products, we take only one when we need the two plants. Now you can take only one. If you have just a challenge with your hormones, for example, you take only the Rovol. But when you target, for example, cancerous cells, in this case, Prostabel would be the product to take. So again, remember, Dr. Katz studied the two plants, Pauperera and Rauwolfia vomitoria, for prostate cancer. And at Kansas University Medical Center, those two very nice scientists studied Pauperera and Rauwolfia vomitoria on ovarian and pancreatic cancer. Sylvie didn't mention this extract, which is also available on the table, ginkgo biloba. I'm sure that everybody here knows about ginkgo biloba. But this one is not the green leaf of ginkgo, it's the golden leaf. So the properties are going to be very different. And this one is very good, just to summarize, when someone is undergoing, for example, radiation therapy, this is going to protect from the side effect of the radiation therapy, basically from developing fibrosis, deep burning. And it's very good at that, and we have also a lot of experience with this extract, and we have also a publication which is available on the table as well. It's a regulator. It's an enzymes regulator, so it's going to regulate the enzymes at the cellular level. When a cell is in danger because it has something going on, for example, radiation, the ginkgo is able to target this type of cells because the enzymes become hyperactive. And the ginkgo is going to regulate the enzymes so the cell is protected. That's what it does. So it's very good, for protecting our cells. And we can definitely take it also as a preventive, product. I didn't tell you about the preventive also, effects of the Pauperera and Rauwolfia vomitoria because you can take those two, also for prevention. But the ginkgo, it's also a good idea when, you are in an environment. Ginkgo, enzymes regulator, so it's going to protect our good cells, healthy cells, before they are damaged by the environment, by our stress, by whatever. So, and of course, with no side effects and no toxicity. And there's nothing that, we saw, actually, I didn't tell you about the regulation of the hepatic function. It does it very well as well. Ginkgo is very good, when you're undergoing heavy treatment like chemotherapy, for example. Of course, your liver is going to be damaged. And the ginkgo is going to regulate the enzymes because that's its first function, and is going to repair the liver. So publication on the ginkgo available on the table. RNA fragments. So Sylvie told us about the mechanism of action of the RNA fragments. The product is called RealBuild. And this one is very good to help us maintain a good immune system meaning platelets, white blood cells. So anytime we have a deficiency at the bone marrow level with those two counts, platelets and white blood cells, RealBuild is going to help. Sylvie explained very well. Those RNA are very, very specific of the bone marrow to help the bone marrow produce white blood cells and platelets when it's deficient. So you don't have to be sick to take the RealBuild. You can take it also as a preventive protocol when you are undergoing a lot of stress. Sylvie and I, we take it. Actually, this time we didn't take it. I have it in my purse, Sylvie. When we travel, you know, because it's very tiring, and also when you are higher in the sky, you have some radiation. So to protect yourself, just to protect your immune system. And I'd like to remind you that this has been also, you know, used at CTCA in Chicago area. So Sylvie explained I'm a health coach. So anytime you need to have to ask questions about the use of those products, you know, if they are going to be good for you depending on your health situation, I can help you with that. And I have cards available over there. So anytime you can email me. Here there's no healthcare professionals, I guess, with us tonight. No doctors. That's okay. We have actually a professional line that combines those extracts, nothing new. So if you want to tell your doctor about those extracts, know that they have on the website, there's a place for them to go. They have these menu professionals where they can access training and the science to be able to recommend that to their patients. So if you're the patient, you know, it would be a good idea for him to get information on the website. So those are the products very quickly. Oncobel is just a combination of the Pao Pereira, Rauwolfia vomitoria, and Ginkgo biloba. So the three plants are in there. And this one is Immunobel. This is the RNA fragments, so the RealBuild I just told you about, but it's a double strength. So meaning that the dosage is going to be different, but that's it. I mean, it's not something new. So again, Josephine at Natural Source, that's the company who manufacture those products that you know, they're all science-based. Now you understood. And they are available over there. So we're there to talk. Thank you so much.
If somebody came up to me and asked me how would they learn more about cancer and treating cancer, I would definitely recommend Sylvie.
It makes you want to learn more about Sylvie's methods, because it's so studied and it's so in-depth.
Read the book, because there's a lot of factual information in there, and it works.
So this may be a really brand new way to really drastic change the outcome.
A lot of my friends would be interested in this kind of information.
If you want to learn more about cancer, I think Sylvie has a lot of resources.
You know, it looks very promising.
I encourage people to look for it.